Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're taking things really high, focusing on an achievement that honestly kind of reshaped what we thought was possible at extreme altitude. We're talking about the incredible history-making feat of Polish adventure skier Andrzej Bargiel. So our mission today is pretty clear. We're going to dig into the sources we have, really try to understand the logistics, the physical cost, and just the sheer difficulty of what he pulled off. We want to get beyond the headline, understand how he did it.
Exactly. And the how is key because it's this combination of skills that makes it so special. Bargiel wasn't just the first guy to ski down Everest. He was the first person to climb Mount Everest and then ski the entire route down, all without using supplementary oxygen.
That's the kicker, isn't it? The no oxygen part.
Absolutely. That single factor shifts it from, an incredibly tough physical challenge to something bordering on the limits of human survival, even cognitive function up there. And it's worth remembering, this wasn't a fluke. This guy has serious pedigree. He's also climbed and skied down K2.
The second highest peak in the world.
Right. And many climbers would argue K2 is technically a harder ski descent than Everest. So he's really in a class of his own.
Yeah, that context is crucial. Skiing K2 is immense, but doing this on Everest at, 29,031 feet without oxygen? That's a different level of physiological adaptation. I remember when the news broke, Red Bull put out that post calling it skiing history. And the video, wow, the reaction was just disbelief almost. Like, how is that even possible?
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About acclimatization, about motor control under extreme hypoxia, because, climbing Everest demands massive endurance. Skiing, it requires technical precision, depth perception, instant reactions, doing both when your body is screaming for oxygen. That's pitting your most basic physical need against your brain's need for absolute clarity under pressure. It's
intense. So let's unpack the person behind this feat, because usually people who achieve these kinds of outlier records have a pretty interesting backstory, often involving risk and endurance from early on. Tell us about Andrzej Bargiel.
Well, he was born April 18th, 1988, near South Poland. And the first thing that kind of jumps out is his family. He's the ninth of 11 children. His parents are Maria and Josef Bargiel.
Wow, 11 kids. That's quite a household.
Yeah, you'd imagine that environment breeds a certain kind of necessity, maybe cooperation, maybe just constant physical activity from day one.
A unique kind of grit, I suppose. Learning to manage chaos, maybe.
Could be. Sources say he was a really energetic kid, but didn't actually get into regular sports until junior high. And it wasn't skiing at first. Initially, he was doing things like horse riding and, interestingly, mountain biking. Lots of mountain biking in pretty rugged terrain near his home.
Mountain biking.
Yeah, and he apparently had some small successes at competitions. But what's interesting is that foundation. Mountain biking, especially in rough, unpredictable terrain, it forces you into constant, split-second risk assessment, right? Holding speed when everything under you is changing.
That's actually a huge point. That's not just fitness. That's training your brain for fast movement on unstable surfaces, which sounds remarkably like what you'd need skiing down Everest ice fields.
Precisely. It seems like skiing might have been the culmination of skills he'd already been honing in other high-risk, high-speed sports.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's get into the real core of this deep dive. The mountain itself, and specifically that no supplementary oxygen rule. That's the revolutionary part, but it must dictate absolutely everything about the attempt. How did he even prepare his body just to survive the climb up?
Well, survival mode kicks in right from base camp in Nepal. For most Everest climbers, oxygen is, their safety net. For Bargiel, the only safety net was acclimatization, getting his body to function to somehow metabolize energy efficiently in that incredibly thin air.
So how did he manage that?
It was all about structure. He did rotation drills, moving up and down between the higher camps, Camp 4, Camp 2, and Camp 3, multiple times. This rotation is absolutely vital. It encourages the body to produce more red blood cells, adjust breathing, circulation, basically adapting to less and less oxygen.
So it's not just about getting used to the altitude, it's like a forced biological adaptation.
Yeah.
A very managed exposure to hypoxia.
Exactly. And without oxygen, if you rush that process, what's the risk?
Oh, the risk is it's catastrophic.
Yeah.
Without proper acclimatization and no O2 bother to fall back on, you're looking at severe altitude sickness almost immediately.
We're talking high-altitude cerebral edema, HACE fluid on the brain. or high-altitude pulmonary edema, HAPE, fluid in the lungs.
Yeah, leading to loss of coordination, confusion, delirium.
Often fatal. And crucially for this feat, someone suffering from HACE simply cannot perform the complex motor skills needed for technical skiing. So his slow, deliberate rotation wasn't optional. It was fundamental to even having a chance.
Okay, so he completes this vital acclimatization phase. Then comes the final push from Camp 3, historically the toughest part, the death zone.
That's right. He started his summit climb from Camp 4, and the time it took. This is where it gets really mind-bending. 16 hours. He climbed from Camp 4 to the summit in just 16 hours.
16 hours. We should probably put that in perspective for, for people listening. Is that considered fast for that section, especially without oxygen?
Fast. It's astonishingly fast. A typical climb from Camp 4, usually with supplemental oxygen, takes climbers anywhere from, say, 20 to 30 hours, maybe even more.
Right, because they're conserving energy, managing their O2 levels.
Exactly. Bargiel basically sprinted it, relatively speaking. 16 hours without oxygen is just a phenomenal display of raw endurance. But it also suggests something else. He was likely trying to minimize his time exposed in the death zone above 8,000 meters. You just can't linger up there without O2.
So the speed wasn't just about setting a record, it was a survival tactic.
Very likely. It's a calculated risk. Climb incredibly fast, reduce exposure time, but accept that you're going to absolutely drain your energy reserves right before the most technical part, the ski down.
Wow. So he arrives at the summit, utterly depleted, with basically nothing left for recovery, knowing the hardest part, skill-wise, is still to come.
Precisely. It speaks volumes about his calculation and his tolerance. Maximum effort on the ascent to minimize time, knowing it makes the descent exponentially harder and riskier.
Okay, so that brings us straight to the descent, which started almost immediately, right?
Almost instantly. The sources confirm he didn't hang around. Within just a few minutes of reaching the summit, he clicked into his skis and started down.
And the pace initially?
It was incredible. He made it down to Camp 2 in just 5 hours.
5 hours from the summit to Camp 2. That's covering a huge amount of vertical, very technical terrain.
Exactly. After that 16-hour hypoxic climb, think about the control needed, the constant decision-making on that terrain in that state.
This is where we really need to connect the physiology to the skiing risk. The video footage, it showed him navigating some seriously treacherous sections. The ice that's described as always moving and collapsing, like the Khumbu icefall lower down, but similar dangers higher up too, seracs and things. When you're that hypoxic, how specifically does the lack of oxygen mess with the skills you absolutely need for that kind of skiing?
This is really the core of it, isn't it? Oxygen deprivation isn't just about feeling tired. It actively attacks your central nervous system. At that altitude, without supplemental O2, Bargiel would be fighting against significantly slowed reaction times.
Okay.
Loss of fine muscle control, which you desperately need for precise edge control on steep ice, and crucially, severely compromised depth perception.
Compromised depth perception
Yep.
while skiing fast over crevasses and unstable ice.
Exactly. If you misjudge a gap or the steepness of a slope by even a tiny margin, the consequences are immediate and likely fatal. So speed becomes almost a defense mechanism, forcing him through the danger zones quickly. But that speed also magnifies the consequences of any tiny error caused by his hypoxic brain.
So he's caught in this paradox. Go fast to survive the exposure. But the speed increases the danger because his brain is struggling to process the visual information correctly and control his muscles precisely. That's an unbelievable balancing act.
It really is. Which leads to a really important point about his risk management during the descent. It wasn't one continuous run from summit to base camp.
Right, he made that incredible 5-hour push down to Camp 2, but then he had to stop.
He stopped because darkness was falling.
Yeah, the sources confirmed that. Now, was that just an unavoidable setback, stopping him from a pure nonstop descent, or was that actually a critical piece of calculated judgment?
Oh, I think it was absolutely the latter. Supreme risk management. Sure, a nonstop descent might sound faster or purer on paper, but skiing through areas like the Hotsu Face or approaching the Khumbu Icefall, these dynamic, constantly shifting glacial environments in the dark.
While hypoxic.
While hypoxic, with compromised vision and depth perception already, trying to navigate that moving and collapsing ice by headlamp. That's not pushing limits, that's basically suicidal.
So stopping was the smart play. The only play, really.
Oh, definitely. It was recognizing that survival and the success of the whole attempt depended on having daylight to pick the safest route through those final, most unstable sections.
A necessary pause, then, to ensure he actually finished the mission, and then the next day, he completed the descent relatively quickly.
Yes, the final leg the next morning was swift. Once daylight returned and he presumably felt slightly recovered from the overnight halt, he skied from Camp Second and down to base camp.
How long did that take?
Took him only about 45 minutes.
Wow, 45 minutes. So once he was below the most complex, dangerous ice sections, he could really let the skis run.
Exactly. It shows that once the objective hazard level decreased slightly and he had daylight, his technical skill allowed for incredible speed and efficiency, even after everything he'd been through.
So if we pull it all together, this whole feat, the 16-hour anaerobic climb from Camp 4, the immediate transition, 5 hours of incredibly technical skiing while severely hypoxic, the calculated stop, and then the final sprint.
It represents arguably the most complete single demonstration of mastery over the world's highest peak. It's the ultimate fusion of extreme endurance mountaineering and high-consequence technical skiing. Nothing quite like it.
Yeah, this deep dive really confirms it. Andrzej Bargiel's achievement wasn't just about being the first. It was a combination: the full climb, the full ski descent, and crucially, doing it all without supplemental oxygen. It really does set a new benchmark, doesn't it? It pushes the boundaries of what we understand about human capability at extreme altitude.
It absolutely does. It forces physiologists, the whole high-altitude community really, to look again at the data on human tolerance for sustained hypoxia combined with extreme exertion. And maybe this is a final thought for you, the listener, to consider, building on what we've discussed. Given this unique mix of speed, altitude, technical skill, and especially a lack of oxygen, does Bargiel's accomplishment fundamentally change our understanding of the baseline for human tolerance in extreme environments? Or is this perhaps an incredible but ultimately unrepeatable outlier performance, something only possible due to his unique genetics or maybe his specific training background, like that mountain biking we talked about? Where does this achievement sit on the spectrum of human potential?